All right, let's jump right into the interview with Daniel Cotlar. Daniel is my first exposure to you, Daniel, was at Rice University's Customer Management Symposium, and all of the speakers there were tremendous. But you're the one that was really memorable for me, and you stood out for a number of reasons. One is since I earned my PhD in consumer behavior, you just seem so in tune with the consumer perspective. And to be honest with you, it wasn't really what I was expecting because you were talking about blinds.com. And that's not necessarily the first industry that comes to mind when we think about customer-oriented marketing. How would you describe your approach to customers?
I'll start with blinds.com. What we had some very codified core values of the company. And those were things like, there were four of them: experiment without fear of failure, continuously improve, enjoy the ride, and always speak up. And then we had a platform of what the purpose of the company was, and that's to make people better than they ever believed possible. That means ourselves, it means our customers, it means our partners. A lot of that stuff is stuff you'll find anywhere as far as core values and purpose, but we really lived it, and it was on the wall. It was like pervasive.
One thing that you showed us at that Customer Management Symposium, which was, and I don't know if you coined it the same way, but customer journey mapping, which is, again, something that's increasing in popularity in our field. So could you tell me a little bit about how you went about implementing customer journey mapping, what kind of data you used, and what it told you about your customers at blinds.com?
So imagine you want to know how life is, and you poll a bunch of 80-year-olds and say, so how was it? It's pretty good. And then you get 1 to 10 ratings of how life was from 80-year-olds. And I think that's what most people do in terms of their customers. They, at the end of everything, how was it? And you get something from that, and that's wonderful. And I think we did that for many years. Where the nuance and the opportunity to improve comes in is where you start asking questions throughout the way. And it's identifying those moments that are meaningful in the whole process. What were your teenage years like? Ask them while they're a teenager, maybe. And then, when you get married and you have kids and you're, all these steps on the way, you identify those important steps, and then you create kind of a map and a rating for a satisfaction or whatever your tool you're using at each of those levels. And then you can say, all right, I can see kind of a roller coaster of where things are better, and then we fail here, and then we pick it up there, and then over a year later, people generally like us, or they don't, or whatever it is.
Right.
You get a much more nuanced, rich story, allowing you to take action on those things. Now, that's the first level view that goes from a single data point to a series of data. Maybe it's 5 points. The next level down from that is to say, what does this look like for key clusters of customers who are in some way differentiated from each other? What does that look like for people who've heard about us from friends, or those who heard about us on the radio? Or so then maybe the source is one of the differentiators. Then a lens, I call them. If you take another lens, you might say, depending on what product they bought, or depending on what channel they used to talk to us and buy from us.
So to get the emotional pulse, because often you're looking for things like pain points, right? When you're doing customer journey mapping, was that all done through surveying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surveying. And we didn't have sophisticated tools, really. Just it's a matter, I think that a lot of the people think that you have to be some kind of a large data surveying agency or hire somebody expensive. You really can do all this stuff on your own.
Okay, so this could be related to customer journey mapping or not, but do you have an example, especially since you're someone with an analytical background, of where you were able to identify and fill some gap that existed in your marketing program?
What we were trying to be good at is to make the complex simple. That was the most important thing. So we look for pain points and throughout the experience, the transaction that could go wrong, and what were the main things people were concerned about. And we found that they were concerned about a few very obvious things. They were, I'm going to measure this wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look like a fool and waste money. And it's going to be a hassle. My wife will be mad at me. The blinds will be sitting around the living room for a couple months, et cetera. So that's one big one. I don't even know if I can pick the right color and actually choose this right. I don't know if I can install it. So those are some of the big pain points that we went through. So let's start. So what we did for the first was, and this is one of the big, I think, launch pads to accelerate our growth. We took the number one concern and tried to mitigate it, and said, I know you're worried about mismeasuring. Let's just put it on the table. If you mismeasure, we'll make a new one for free. And that was a big turning point. We called it the Sure Fit Guarantee. At first, we tried to sell it as insurance, measuring insurance. And not many people used it, and we found it was actually making people more concerned. And we just decided it's going to be our brand. We did some A/B testing, and we saw a 15% lift just from that reassurance. Now, the truth is that 2% of people ever used it.
Yeah.
But it's the reassurance. And the reason they so few used it is because we put a lot of things in place on the education side to make sure that we didn't create disasters.
Right.
But some people use it and they need to. So that was the first thing for measuring. The next thing was product choice. And for that, we created a blind finder, kind of a wizard that would have mimicked the same thing that you would do if you went to somebody's home as an expert consultative salesperson. Ask the questions. Hey, what are the main things you're worried about? Is it light? Is it blocking light? Is it, is it privacy? And then asking a few questions, you can whittle down 300 products down into 3. Right. And then after that, instituted free samples. So you can go look at the colors in your home, that kind of thing, shipped overnight. And finally, the last thing was about installation. Well, we wanted to show how simple it was, and that was through video. Now everybody has video, but it was a little revolutionary at the time.
Did you do A/B testing or any kind of experimentation? Since you're, I imagine you did, since you're, an e-commerce website. But what did that look like? What was your approach to experimentation?
Well, I think that's the lifeblood of an e-commerce and e-commerce company, and it's what drew me to the company is the ability to do that. Our whole the marketing department was themed the Idea Lab, and we felt we fancied ourselves lab, kind of scientists. So there's a lot of tools out there, some free, some paid, that make it super easy to do that. Just test everything, test incremental improvements. It's better to find, 1% improvements, but to do that very often, you've seen charts that show what 1% does over time.
Sure.
And just continually lowering the bar on what it takes to try something. And that means, you have this amazing idea. Well, how can we try that within a few days of effort and be able to recognize and measure the effect of it? So we had some rules for testing. The fact that, number one, if you're calling it a test, it's actually, here's how you're going to measure its success. Number two, that if it's successful, it'll be significant enough to make a difference. You don't want to try something and not sure, first of all, be not sure whether it succeeded or not. So lay out the test properly. And even if it is successful, you don't want it to not matter at all. And then also you want it to be something that you can tell your mom about. So there were certainly opportunities to test concepts where we probably would have made more profit, but it wouldn't be something we'd be proud of.
What are the most important things to know about managing customers if you're just getting started or if you're doing it on a small scale?
As a marketer, I consider some people go straight to, oh, he's an ad or she's in advertising.
Yeah.
That's what the least important part of what you do. Right. And in our group, which eventually grew from 1 person to 40 people in marketing, it was always a minority of the team that was involved in customer acquisition in general and advertising in specific.
Okay.
So I would say it's far more important, 10-1, to you've heard all the studies about the value of keeping your own customer versus procuring more customers, and how much easier it is to do and more efficient and cheaper it is to do that. But so much more valuable to understand and improve the existing customer experience. To me, that is what a marketer does within a company. You're the eyes and ears of the customer experience. You are the voice of the customer, and you interpret what their experience is so that it can be improved across the company.